Good morning. Welcome to the episode of Breakfast Analysis. Last episode, if you want to call it that. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the new changes coming in year number 5. And, it was very broad. It was very general, mostly just like relaying information. Today, we're going to be doing a similar type of video, except instead of doing the whole overview, we're going to be talking a little bit more specific. We're going to be talking about how Tier 2 in North America in particular is affected, mostly because that's in a sense, my bread and butter, right? That and the Canada scene are kind of where I have worked the most in terms of Siege. So, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. There's been a lot of controversy recently, so let's just, get it all the way. It's going to be a lot more opinion-based compared to the last video as well. Last time was basically just spitting facts. We'll start with the facts today, and then we'll talk about why it's good, why it's bad, who it's good for, who it's not good for. So, in case you didn't hear, there are big changes coming to Challenger League for next season. We already knew that there weren't going to be promotion and relegation. Most of us knew. I don't know, it was announced. Some people were still surprised to hear that, I guess. But no, promotion and relegation is gone. And that means that this season is going to be just played for money, played for, bragging rights, played for showing off. What are the changes that Ubisoft announced in their article they released a few days ago? Well, first of all, the prize pool is being doubled to over $50,000. That's quite a big chunk of money. Of course, you got to keep in mind that that's not all going to one team. It's not all going to one player. Nobody's walking away with $50K. But that's still a lot of resources that Ubisoft is pumping into the North American Tier 2 scene. You really like to see that. That's going to help sustain some of those Tier 2 players for sure. No teams obviously going to Pro League. They reiterated that. That's not happening. And then they, said a little bit more, like, I would say vague statements, but they mentioned they passionately believe a robust Challenger League is vital for our Rainbow Six Siege competitive ecosystem. So some words of encouragement, and then they also said that more details will be coming in the next few weeks in regards to what will be replacing North American Challenger League. So not a lot. I mean, mostly just the prize pool buff and the fact that teams are coming in. But I also think it's important to point out, and I'm going to point it out now because I don't know if I'll have time later. Ubisoft does care about the Tier 2 scene. I think that's shown in the fact that they're giving more money to the scene, and also by the fact that, they mentioned that this is something that they're concerned about. They're not forgetting about Tier 2, as it kind of felt like they have for the last 3 years. So this is exciting. This is good stuff to come on out. But of course, the one negative that I mentioned is a pretty big deal for a lot of people, and it should be. Those are the facts. Let's talk about some rumors. I don't like to discuss rumors, but this stuff is so widespread that I think it would be dishonest not to bring them up. So let's just get them out of the way. Presumably, we're franchising next year. We're going to Las Vegas for a LAN league in North American Pro League. They're going to 10 teams, and supposedly Sonics and Disrupts are going to be getting into those spots. I don't know, honest to God, if that's how much of that is true. They did announce that it's going to be LAN. CGG announced it's going to be in Las Vegas, so that's all for sure. But the franchising bit, I don't know how you could do it without franchising, but that's technically never been confirmed, and Sonics and Disrupt have definitely never been confirmed. So people are definitely upset about that. The Sonics and Disrupts are just being given those spots. And so let's dive into this. Why are people upset? Should they be upset? Yes and no in terms of should. Let's start off by the fact that they're just giving out spots. They're not letting people qualify. This is the big thing that a lot of Challenger League players, a lot of fans of Challenger League, a lot of just people in the community are really upset about, and I get it. I really do. It feels unfair. It really just feels like these, 10 players, whoever they may be, who are on these two teams, are kind of just given free passes to play in Pro League, right? It doesn't really seem like these players will have earned it, right? Sonics could get dead last, and still you think, well, Ubisoft's going to invite this team. Why? They've already been invited. There's rumors now that Sonics might not be playing Challenger League just because they don't have to, because they already have a spot. So there's all sorts of stuff going around, but I think you gotta look at it a little bit more pragmatically. As much as I hate to admit it, there's a leak account on Twitter that had some really good points about this, and I'm not going to give it attention and link it to you, but I'll reiterate their points and just say that, like, it's a lot of work to sell a franchise spot, right? And, there's been debates on whether this spot's been sold or given or what, but, like, the fact of the matter is you need an organization to commit to, signing players, buying like a house in Las Vegas for these players, getting them all transported there. There's not going to be a lot of time between the end of Challenger League season number 11 and the start of Pro League season 12. So if you're not going to invite these teams early, if you're not going to invite these teams now, what you're doing is you're forcing both players and organizations to wait until the very last day of Challenger League ends, right? Assume worst case scenario. Assume that, we need that final play day to just figure out who the top two teams are going to be, right? You need teams. You need players to, first of all, sort through offers, as soon as that, finishes, because there's going to be a lot of offers more likely than not, then you need those players to negotiate with those teams, sign an exclusive contract. Then the team's got to work on moving everybody over there, uprooting these players out of their lives, putting them into Las Vegas, making sure everybody's compatible, making sure you don't want to make any roster moves, buying the house, getting all that sorted out, figuring out like who's going to take care of these gamer boys who are just going to be plopped down in the middle of Las Vegas, figuring out everything, how that's going to work with Ubisoft's schedule. I mean, it would be a nightmare to try to coordinate all of that in 1 month. And, the idea that some people are saying, well, just pick up a team, right? Just say like, okay, like sell the org spots now, but give it to whatever players, like come in first and second in Challenger League. I think that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, you're basically going to a company and you're saying like, hey, here's a spot, here's some work we're going to give you, and you have to hire these people. Unless like the people you're hiring don't want to work with some other people, right? Like that doesn't really make any sense. That's not really how business works. That's not really how esports work at all. Looking at any major game, like no esport org, or not org, I should say no company has ever forced an organization to sign players. That's just not how it works. If you walk up to, let's say, Disrupt Gaming, and you're like, I need you to sign this player. Disrupt Gaming have, all right to say no. And I don't think you like would want to force them to sign a contract that makes them then sign those players, because then what are they paying them, right? You've got to figure out like what's that salary going to look like. You're forcing the players to sign those contracts too. So are you going to set a pay rate for those players? What if one of those players is worth a hell of a lot more than what you're forcing the org to pay them? There's just so many like questions up for grabs, right? Which org gets which spots? I don't think it's reasonable to transition into a land-based league and not invite the teams really early on. So that's why I just don't think it's realistic to be able to have promotion relegation in a franchised land-based system. There's been a little bit of like debate on whether there's going to be promotion relegation in future seasons. Again, I don't know. I'm not, in the loop with that type of stuff, but I doubt it. I highly doubt they're ever going to do promotion relegation again in North America. Right? Take it as it is. We're going to a land-based league. You just can't have players swapping in and out like that. You can't, give an org a month's notice and just be like, well, these players are coming up, right? Somebody sign these players, right? Because you could even like walk into the hypothetical situation where like, great, Joe Esports have won Challenger League. No org wants to pick them up, right? Like, let's say they got Yardy on their team and he's just dropping like R's all over the place and nobody likes them, right? Like, no orgs want to associate with that. What do you do? Like, what do you do? And I'm not saying, maybe that was a poor example, right? But, it would be really tough to force an org into that position. And if you found yourself in a position where you got like 5 players going up the Pro League and none of them were signable, right? Like theoretical. I think every player in Challenger League, disclaimer, this season is signable. I think that they all, would be fine personality-wise, whether they have the skill to be there or not. We'll see over the next few weeks, but like, regardless of any of that, if you had a hypothetical situation where players walked in and like they were just toxic, unsignable players, what do? You really can't lock yourself in a corner like that, I think, for Ubisoft. So it doesn't make sense if you're going to a land-based system. If you're going to franchise, promotion relegation just can't go like that. So maybe you're saying, all right, Jesse, I agree. You can't have promotion relegation. You can't invite the top Challenger League teams when you're franchising. So why are we franchising? Well, that's a good question. I've been arguing for franchising in Siege for a long time. I never really thought it would like end up like this, where maybe one region franchises and the rest don't. But I'm glad that North America's franchising. It's probably the best region to franchise if you're gonna franchise. There's a lot of money in America. The American population are very used to franchising. It's not like other regions where they're gonna be like, what is franchising? What's going on here? North American viewers are gonna get that 100%. I think there's a lot of benefits to franchising. I think franchising is the best way to run a league, right? Sports league, esports league, whatever. And I'm North American, so I've got a bias for that, perhaps. But I'm also somebody who's, focused on a lot of different esports. I've watched a lot of different, tournament structures. I've watched a lot of different competitive ecosystems. I strongly believe that that a franchise system, a regional franchise system, is the best way to do it, like culminating in a good like international tournament. I think League of Legends does it probably better than any other sports or esport ecosystem in the world. I think League of Legends is the best ecosystem. I don't even think it's that good of a game to watch. I think it's a very good game to play. I think it's a very good ecosystem, and those things keep that esport alive. Um, I mean, this is going on a bit of a tangent, but you could even take a look at like a game like CS:GO. CS:GO is a terrible ecosystem. It's tournaments all over the place. They're running into a problem of too many tournaments. Valve doesn't really step in at all, but it's such a good game that it still survives. And there's so many like orgs that really believe in that, and there's so many like outside influencers that are keeping that game alive that it's still like finding success, right? Or I still think it's a terrible ecosystem. And so having a good ecosystem helps. It's not the end of the world if you don't have one, but I think that Siege is going in the right direction with franchising. So where I'm getting this is with this. How is it a good thing? How is franchising good? Well, let's start for the players. It's a lot more stable for the players. It's a lot more of a relief. Just take a look at this season, right? Players are feeling more comfortable to relax. They're feeling more comfortable to make strange changes. Cloud9 in League of Legends. I'm going to keep going back to League of Legends. I don't even watch much League, but they've just got a really great example of how franchising is done right. Not talking about Blizzard here. And so they're like, take a look at Cloud9, right? In the I think it was still the LCS. Yeah, no, it's always been the LCS. It's Europe that changed. It was the LCS, the NALCS, a few years ago, where Cloud9 like dumped their whole roster and picked up a bunch of nobodies, right? And they could make that risk because if they failed, they're still in the league, So it's more important for players. They can experiment with different stuff. I think you're seeing it even in this season of Pro League, right? Like, take a look at Evil Geniuses. Do you think they make all these drastic changes if they have the potential of losing their spot next season? You think all these teams are bringing in international players if there's the opportunity that they just drop out immediately? Probably not. I think you're seeing teams get more experimental and make more interesting changes now that they have that safety net, now that they know that we're not going to, lose our jobs if this roster move doesn't work out or if we can't perform as a team. I think it's safer for players, and it just allows them to build lives around this career a lot safer than it does when you don't have promotion or when you have promotion relegation. So I think it's huge for players. I think it's really good for viewers as well. Sure, promotion relegation storylines can be great, but like promotion relegation also has a huge, possibility to ruin storylines, right? Let's say you're a lifelong fan of a team and then they're just gone. That doesn't happen in a franchise system. Storylines and rivalries between teams can really build up. Traditional sports fans in North America will know, like, oh yeah, I hate this team because 40 years ago they beat my team in the playoffs. Like, there's really long-standing rivalries that you can't really get in a non-franchise system. And sure, I mean, you could take a look back at Siege and point out a couple examples of where we do have these long-term rivalries, like Evil Geniuses G2. You could say, well, Siege has never been franchised, and these two organizations for a long time have, maybe been big rivals, but I think we're going to see it way more in a franchise system, and I think the stories that can be told in a franchise league are just a lot better and a lot better for the viewers, even if just for the fact that, your favorite team's not going to get booted out. Maybe some players will, for sure, but that's with everything, right? People get old, people get bad. That's kind of got to happen, but, if I go out and buy like I don't know, let's keep it like this. If I go out and buy an Evil Geniuses shirt tomorrow, like let's say I decorate my whole room with Evil Geniuses stuff, barring they change their logo, nothing's going to happen to that team, right? They're going to stay in there. They could sell their spot, sure, but there's still a lot more like safety, a lot more, I guess, bang for my buck in terms of what I'm buying. As a viewer, getting invested in a team is a lot less costly and a lot less of a risk now. You can cheer for those lower level teams without it feeling like, or I shouldn't say lower level, but like weaker teams, without feeling like, well, I'll cheer for them this season and the next season I don't got to worry about them again, right? So I think that's nice for the viewers. I think it's a lot safer for the orgs. Probably the orgs benefit more than anybody, obviously. I mean, before it was like if there's auto relegation and there's like promotion relegation, you got like a 1 in 4 chance of losing your team every 6 months. That's not a great spot to be in for your orgs, especially when you've got pilot program revenue being based off that, right? If you're an org over the last year or two of Siege and you're in the pilot program, you're raking in that money, and then your team like gets relegated to Pro League. I mean, you've seen it happen time and time again. Orgs scramble to get a new team together so they can stay in the pilot program because it's so important for orgs. It's such a revenue stream because Siege as an esports is so much more profitable than any other game. For orgs to be in, they really need those pilot program spots. And so, when their team gets sent under, an org kind of scrambles, and it's not great, right? You don't want an org to be swapping players every 6 months, right? Take a look at the German squad, now German. They used to be relatively French in Europe. They currently go under the name of Rogue. How many orgs has that team had? How many players, or how many sets of players have like Rogue have the Giants had? Giants already didn't play in pilot program, right? But they're hoping they will be. And so, you don't want orgs just losing their spot, right? You don't want unorganized teams inside a pro league. That's been a problem, in the last 2 years as well, especially in North America. So it's a lot safer for orgs when you're franchise. You can make a lot more money. You can really set up way better deals with sponsorships. Like, yes, I will definitely be playing for the next year. You can count on that, right? Unless I sell the spot, in which case we can work out a deal or whatever. You're not going to a sponsor and being like, well, there's a 50% chance that my team will be playing 6 months from now. Please give me money, right? It's a lot worse for them. And last but not least, it's safer for Ubisoft, right? You don't have to worry about your league falling apart. Just because some crucial organizations back out. You've got them locked in for long term. You've made these deals with these organizations, and you can commit more money, more resources to the org because of it. We're not going to go to a land-based system. We're not going to be able to amp up production, which I presume is happening. I don't know. But we're not going to be able to put all these resources into the game when we're not in a franchise system, right? And so I think it's great that Ubisoft is finally taking the step. I'm sure they're very happy about it. It's going to rake in a lot more money for them. It's going to rake in a lot more money for orgs. It's going to rake in a lot more money for players. It's going to be better experience for viewers. So who's it bad for, right? Franchising. It's great. Absolutely everybody loves it. Well, not quite. The Tier 2 scene's definitely the most vocal crowd against this change, and they should be. I think the Tier 2 scene gets hurt pretty significantly by franchising. And obviously, as somebody who's been very close to the Tier 2 scene, I get it, and that really hurts. And for everybody who's been, complaining over Twitter these last few weeks, I get it, and I agree. It sucks. It really does for all the Challenger League players who have been watching all the changes go on and feeling left behind, feeling like their opportunities are being ripped away from them. Because in a lot of ways they are. Tier 2 players in Challenger League have less of an opportunity to make it big now. Their dream career is harder to grasp than it was a few weeks ago. And that's a big downside for them. And I'm not going to tell those players to stop complaining because this is good for the game, because it's very bad for them. And I think that it's important that they stand up, make their voices get heard, say this is why this is bad for me, and this is why I don't think you should do it. And, this being bad for me is bad for the scene. All things considered, I don't agree. I think that for the health of the game, some people got to lose, and this is just one of those situations where more people are winning than they are losing in this by going into a franchise system. But I definitely, I don't want to be too harsh about it. I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to silence those players who are really feeling the hurt, because this is something quite bad for them. And I'm not going to tell those players to just suck it up either, because it's definitely a damper to them. I will, get kind of annoyed when I hear players, complain that they're never, that they're going to stop playing the game now and that Siege is dead because of this change. That's an overreaction. And I think that if you really are playing for the spot, it did get harder. Absolutely got harder. But being in Pro League is not unobtainable now, right? People have gone on Twitter and gone on these rants about how few players have already, been getting in a Pro League that aren't just being recycled. There's this notion that North American Pro League teams are constantly recycling players. I don't think that's true at all. Year 4 saw 20 new players play North American Pro League for the first time, and that's not including guys like Slevin and Golfi, European players come on in. Year 4 saw a ton of new blood coming in, right? I'll list them all off for you. Ghost, Fultz, Merc, Bullo, Doodle, Hyena, Rexon, Pixel, Mo, Factor, Gotcha, Filthy, Butters, Creators, Dream, Forest, Collo, Crixer, Reed, Spades. All these players played Pro League for the first time in North America in year 5, or in year 4, I should say. So I don't really agree with the notion that, we're having a total just recycle of old players time and time again. There's old players that have been recycled totally, and there's almost as many as there have been new players. There's 19 that I counted, not including player trades between 2 Pro League teams, right? So there's definitely recycling going on, but I think that saying we should have a 25% turnover or something crazy like that, even 15% turnover in players every season, I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think that's focusing on the players in Tier 2 who are grinding and who feel like they deserve a shot, and I get that, but I think it's kind of taken away from the people already in Pro League, right? Who says that these guys are bad enough to be worth replacing? I don't think that you should, I don't think you can look at a Tier 2 player and say, this guy's really good, throw him in a Pro League. I think that's only half the story. You got to look at the Pro League players as well and say, all right, well, how many players in here aren't worth Pro League anymore, right? How many of these players do we not need anymore? And I feel like having promotion relegation really harshly punishes those players who are maybe just not, had a bad season, but still deserve to play in Pro League, right? you just do a mass swap like 5 for 5 players. There's less of like a nuanced system there, right? Who says that the best player on the losing team is worse than the worst player on the better team, right? Nobody. And sure, after those players move, or after those teams move on up, right, then transfers definitely happen. But I feel like the transition of newer players in the Pro League has been fine, and I expect it to slow down a little bit, but I don't think it's gonna, halt to a grinding stop. There's people on Twitter complaining that, oh no, like all of a sudden, no new players are ever gonna join Pro League, but I think that's kind of ridiculous. Already in year 4, we saw a lot of players join Pro League. I think 20 is a good number. I'd say it was a bit large of a number. I think if that comes down to about 15 in year 5, I see year 5 before. About 20 players in year 4, 20 new players in year 4 in Pro League. If that comes down to about 10 to 15, I think that's a good spot. I don't think you want that high of a turnover in Pro League because, again, this is supposed to be a career for players, right? I mean, you've got 10 teams in Pro League. That's 50 players. You want 20 of those players to be recycled every year? That's not a sustainable life, right? You want these guys to be able to play for like 10 years and then retire. I mean, you want these players to be able to feel stability, and that doesn't mean that every player needs to be locked in for 10 years no matter what, but that means that you can't have players just always swapping in and out. You can't have a 20-player turnover every single year. That's ridiculous. So, I don't know, I'm venting a bit much, and obviously 20 new players doesn't necessarily mean 20-player turnover. Sometimes a player will join and then leave. That certainly happened for a lot of players in this last year, but I think that we can afford to lower the amount of players coming into Pro League for year 5 because I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that I don't know. I don't think that we should just discredit the Pro League players like that. You could say that a lot of those players came in just to relegations, and I would agree with that. But I think without relegations, you're going to see a lot more teams turn to the tier 2 scene, whatever it may look like, and you're going to see them searching for more players. That's that just makes sense when that's your only option really to get new talent. Teams are going to be doing that, and when you've placed dead last in the league, you don't get relegated, but you're still going to swap out a lot of players. So I don't think that it's totally over for those players down there. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's all I have to say, really. Quick recap. No more Pro League relegation, more money for Tier 2. Hopefully those resources will continue to increase for both the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 scene. It's really good for everybody except for the Tier 2 scene, but it's not, the end of the world for Tier 2 players. I think that there's still an opportunity. There's still roads there. I think it's healthy for the game that we're maybe limiting the amount of new blood coming into Pro League every single year. And I'm really excited, all things considered. I think it's foolish for players to give up in Challenger League this season. There's 10 new player spots opening up. And sure, you could say like, well, they've already been sold to these orgs, and these orgs already have rosters, so what am I trying for? Well, if those rosters just join the league as they are right now, they're probably gonna get slammed. I guarantee you that the rumors going down around right now are probably gonna change by the time season 12 starts up. So, get your foot in the water. There's also a lot of weak-looking Pro League teams right now. I'm not going to name names, but like there are squads out there that are definitely looking for new talent. So prove yourself. Play Challenge League if you're a player in there. If you're a viewer, watch this season closely because these are the stars of tomorrow still, despite the fact there's no Pro League relegation and promotion. And that's been my rant. I hope it wasn't too rambly. I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully it will be a shorter gap between videos than last time, but I make no promises. So sorry about that. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.